Hello and welcome to the ILHA's webinar on trends in luxury wellness. A tremendous start by my good self there. My name's Katherine Doggrell. I'm the co-founder of NewDog PR. We're a B2B hotel PR organisation. We deal in the finance side of things and not the interesting side of things. But here today, we are dealing with the very interesting side of things, which is the latest trends in wellness, particularly in the luxury segment, where you find unusually the most innovation, I think, than you do in any other part of the hotel sector and any part of wellness in general. And we have three excellent practitioners of all things to do with wellness with us today. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves so that I don't mess it up. Katrin, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me on this panel. So my name is Katrin Melle. I work for Hyatt. I am Regional Vice President for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Talent Management in the EMEA region.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you again for the opportunity to be with you today. My name is Nicholas Clayton, and I'm the president of GoCo Hospitality. And GoCo Hospitality, basically, we consult and manage wellness real estate around the world.
And thank you also for having me. So my name is Daniel Fryer, and I'm a mental health and wellbeing expert, which covers a multitude of sins. In that I provide psychotherapy, coaching, webinars, live presentations, keynote speeches, copy on all aspects of mental health and wellbeing. I'm an author of 2 self-help books, and I provide advice on well-being to a variety of corporate sectors.
Very nice, very nice. So we're going to go back to Nicholas as the key purveyor of wellness on the ground to the guest. And Nicholas, what are you seeing out there at the moment? What's the latest trends? We've been hearing all sorts of exciting things around sleep, around nature. You're joining us, having recently been in the woods. What are you?
Immersing myself in natural beauty, yes.
Exactly, immersing yourself in natural beauty.
I think the big thing that strikes me, and of course, this is right up Daniel's alley. I'm going to throw a softball to him, but I think that the mental health and kind of the state of mindfulness is really something that has never gone out of fashion, but it's been elusive for a lot of people. But I think the topic of mental health kind of in the forums of society today have been very helpful to kind of open this up, and for people that just struggle maybe slightly and want to control better their anxiety, or just kind of be in the moment more effectively. I think this is something that continues to build momentum. I think spirituality has become okay in the area of hospitality and travel. I think at some point that was something that was, kind of steered away from because we didn't want to kind of prescribe a denomination. But I think people understand in today's world as they travel that when there is moments created for spirituality, it is up to you to determine what it is you'd like to worship. But I think spirituality and mental health become two big factors, I think, in the way of what people are thinking today when they travel.
Right. And how do you deliver? I'm going to come back to Danny with the just struggling a little bit, because I quite like that. Well, I like it a lot. So how do you deliver on your properties spirituality for people?
So I think the best thing that we can do, because we consult and with developers on how to effectively, manage the construction process, the design and construction process of, wellness-oriented facilities, which might be resorts or, communities, wellness communities of some type, usually a residential component, usually a hotel component. And, what we like to do is think about the spaces that we create for people, both public areas and private areas, for these moments. That's really what we can do, is make sure lighting, ventilation, that the ambiance of certain areas really facilitate people to have silent moments, do breath work, mental health work, and also spirituality.
Right. And how's that sort of changed in recent years? Because my kind of first experience, not that it's extensive, of hotel spas and things, is that they're kind of far, far away, preferably underground. There's not so much kind of inclusion of them within the greater body of the hotel operation.
Yeah, I think when we take on a hotel or a larger project of any nature, we usually work with the developer to kind of have wellness kind of wash through the entire experience. So if you're doing a community, you want to think about what kind of fruit trees to plant and what kind of other things to have in your public spaces, where ideally people could just, pick a piece of fruit from time to time. Where do you place water stations and hydration and shade, and where do you create, walk spaces and kind of normal exercise kind of things that people can do very easily, whatever the age group. So it's not really just the spa or just the fitness center. It's really the integration of wellness through the development of an entire, let's say, resort community, let's say.
And what for you counts as a community? Because that sounds like an appealing word that we hear a lot of in the rest of hotels.
Well, I think of community, I think of hotels, or, generally this probably could be urban or in a leisure location, but it would be hotel, a residential component, and then the other amenities that kind of act as the glue for that group of people. Some people coming on a more transient basis, those that actually then on the other side of the coin, they actually reside there most of the time. That to me is what we think of community.
So lovely. I'm just be interested in coming back to the kind of the urban delivery a bit later. But Daniel, Nicholas mentioned people who just struggle maybe a little bit, and I think that's a very interesting area to look at, because we think of wellness, and we think of traditionally hotel wellness as being having a spa break and getting some treatments and that sort of thing. And there's less focus on mental health. You kind of would veer maybe into some light yoga is probably the closest that any of us looking at it in the whole would think about it. But I guess since the pandemic and since the kind of it's been more acceptable to look at people's mental health, the idea that people are just struggling a little bit, I think that encompasses, 80% of the people on the planet. Maybe you'd be able to tell me an exact number. If you did have an exact number, that would be super useful, by the way. But I like this idea that there's now an appreciation of this kind of micro struggle. I'm looking for something to trademark, but is that something that you see more easily being able to bring into a hotel wellness, these micro strugglers, mini strugglers?
Some wellness programs are already doing it. I think some of the Hyatts do, some of the Redwoods do, and you're bringing more skills-based toolkit offerings into the wellbeing program. So rational emotive behavior therapy, CBT, mindfulness-based CBT, positive psychology. So alongside your spas and your massages and your hot stone therapies, you are coming into your holiday, you're coming into your retreat, you're coming into your time away from your stressful environment. And as well as being de-stressed with all those traditional wellness offerings, you are being taught valuable tools and techniques that will help you mitigate your stress once you return to your stressful environment. The stressful environment being work, because work stress is the number one cause of stress in the developing world. The statistics are 1 in 4 people have a mental health issue at any given time, but I think it's much higher than that since the pandemic. And whatever way you cut the statistics, work stress has gone through the roof. And the problem when you have a beautiful, wonderful wellness holiday is that you come back glowing with peace and calm and serenity. And that normally gets ruined by lunchtime, because you're right back in it. You've got 7,000 emails to answer and a backlog of other work. And so it all disappears rapidly. Whereas if you can teach people valuable skills to mitigate their stress more effectively, that well-being post-holiday glow lasts a lot longer. So it's about bringing, and some hotels and spa offerings have already done that. It's about bringing in tools and techniques from different therapeutic modalities that you can teach to your guests while they are there, so that they can take them away with them. And right. Spirituality can most definitely be part of that.
And how would you put that? Do you have that, like you walk into reception and on a flip chart it says, are you stressed? Have some CBT. How are you kind of, realistically offering this to people without it being, I'm on my way to the asylum, this is my by the beach asylum? I know you're not allowed to use asylum as anyone's term, very offensive. But
it's just there on the menu.
Right. So the acceptance that we all now have of mental health issues is something you can easily just write into a spa menu.
Absolutely. So you can have hot stone therapy, you can have massage, you can have a mindfulness session, at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday or at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. And you could have hypnotherapy for stress, CBT for stress at this time or by appointment. And it's just there. You're not embarrassed about it. It's not hidden away. You don't have to know a special code word to access it. It's just on the menu. And it's there to access if you want it as part of your overall program. So it's front and center.
Right.
And when this can be identified, just to complement what Daniel was saying, this can be identified through a wonderful assessment process that usually takes place in the very beginning, where people would do some diagnostics on their current state of health, and they would be interviewed perhaps by a naturopath who might ask questions like, do you feel high levels of stress or anxiety? Yeah. And if a person answers yes to those things, they become a potential candidate for, kind of not only physical things to do, but also some mental things to do. Sorry. Thank you.
If you want to be really, really ahead of the curve on that one, you could, quite a lot of spas have doctors in residence and nurses in residence. I had to avail myself of one on my spa holiday in March due to an ear infection. But you could have a therapist in residence who could do exactly that. They are there. There is an offering as a modality. It's known as single session therapy. And you drop in, you fill out a form saying what the problem is, and you spend an hour and a half with the therapist. And the idea is they're going to give you everything that you need in that one session. Because it's been identified that the world over, no matter how many therapy sessions you get allocated or that you can afford, the modal number of sessions attended by people is usually one. And it's quite often because they get everything that they need from that one session. So you could have it on the program, but you could also have somebody in residence so that somebody can come in and go, I would like a single session with you, please. And then in that session, you're providing single session therapy that will hopefully give them everything they need to take back with them. They don't do it here in the UK for some strange reason, but in America, in Australia, and in South Africa, they have specific single session clinics. They don't in the UK. They do have a druid, a wellness retreat. We are behind, not ahead of or even on the curve. I'd like to see it introduced as a practice in therapy centres. And there is a drive by the people that support it to do that. But in other countries, you drop in, you fill out a form that's very specific. You wait 10 minutes, then you get to see me by a therapist. You get an hour and a half. You also get a transcript and a recording of that session as backup, and the offer of more therapy if you would want it. But obviously that wouldn't work so well in a hotel session. So it would be that one, have something on a group program, but also that ability to have that single session drop in for you need it. So let's say that you're there for a week. Let's say you're there for a long weekend. That's an hour and a half of your time in your wellness retreat, in which you could get a lot of valuable tools to help you going back.
Well, you say that this would be a single session and you wouldn't have the chance to come back because you're staying in a hotel. But I have wondered for a while now whether this isn't something that hotels, the large brands, are always looking for a new loyalty lure.
Well, can I drop that word loyalty and shove in the word community that was touted earlier on?
If you like, as long as you don't do that, I find that upsetting.
No, none of that. We are all looking for a community. We are all looking for a place where we belong. We try and create workplace communities, but it's a very weird community because you know that as soon as you're needed, you'll be made redundant. So bye. You are a valuable member of our community until we don't need you anymore. Create a community. And the community isn't just your guests. So I like the idea of reciprocity. I like well-being programs, not just for people in spas, but in actual any business, any company, any work environment. You need a really, really good well-being program for your staff. And for that to be a really good well-being program for your staff, it needs the same thing that we're talking about for guests. Clinics that give you tools to mitigate your stress. Well, if you're giving that to your staff, that will elevate their well-being. Happy staff pass on that sense of happiness in numerous ways to the guests, and that naturally elevates their well-being, so they become happier guests. Well, that feeds back into the staff well-being. It's like a positive feedback loop. It's been studied, it's demonstrable, and it's statistically significant. But if you can create a community so somebody knows okay, they get a loyalty card, but you don't call it a loyalty card, or they know you are where they can go. I can go here, and I know the people there, and they know me, and I know I'm supported there, and I know I'm looked after there, and I know that I can get what I need there. There's your community.
Also, I think it'd be nice to be able to cash points for that, and then you could have like executives doing that in the upper bands. But your way sounds much more wholesome, and would have better results. But away from that, this is all steering effortlessly towards Katherine, who has been sitting there silently, but is full of knowledge. And and so, do please tell us what Hyatt is doing with your team members in terms of what Danny's been talking about in terms of reciprocity and what it means and how this all feeds into wellness. Because I know you have many things. And then I will come to Nicholas and hear about his team member fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was sitting in silence, but I was listening intently. So yes, it was interesting to listen to you because I think we can also learn from all these insights, even when you're a panelist yourself. So maybe to add on what was being said, I think, yes, when we think of a vacation, right, we think on going on holiday, it's for wellness, for well-being, and then we come back and there's something different. So I would like to start with that well-being should be sustainable, right? It should be a state that we are in. Most of the time, I would want to go for that ambition. When it comes to well-being at work, because you touched upon this, Daniel, as well, you spoke about a community. I think that's an interesting way to put it. I'd like to add the word culture here. I think for an organization to focus on well-being, it's about making it part of your culture, who you are, because a culture is how people demonstrate, what kind of behaviors people demonstrate and how they are with one another. And I think being well is a result of also certain behavioral cultural environment, I would say. So coming to Hyatt, at Hyatt, we have a very strong company purpose, and that is to care for people so they can be their best. And if you think about what is actually behind this sentence, well, first of all, the word care is very deep and goes beyond serving, etc. It's a very deep word. For people, for us, it's including our colleagues, neighbors, customers, owners, who we interact with. And being your best is also very powerful because it says that to be your best, we all need different things. Maybe I need different things in the morning than in the afternoon even, right? So I think everything that we do at Hyatt really starts with this purpose and bringing that to life. And how we do that, coming closer a bit to well-being and being well. But first of all, well-being is part of our values. It is something that we expect our leaders to champion and to role model. And when we think about leaders, it also includes not only creating an environment where others are well, but also your own well-being. It's this whole aspect of self-care. Because if you don't demonstrate, what you want to create as an environment for others, it's always more challenging. So we have a couple of instruments that help us live this culture and live this purpose. Just to name one, we have a Global Wellbeing Week where it's all about well-being, and it's beautiful to see what the different hotels across the globe and offices do during this week and the events that are being organized. It's a huge variety of what is being done. Obviously, what do we need at this point in time? Whether it's, I don't know, dance classes, walking meeting, nutrition campaigns, etc. There's multiple examples. But having a week or a time dedicated to this, I think also helps live the culture. So those are some of the elements that we look into, but it really is grounded in our purpose, and we have some instrument in place to really make sure that we bring this to life.
Also, what sort of things do you do to ensure that? I think when we were talking ahead of this call, you talked about how you were looking for emotionally intelligent behavior, and that seemed like a pretty interesting target, given kind of general targets that we have at work.
When we think about, again, our purpose and caring for people, how do we do this? Well, it's about creating connections and sincere and true connections between people. And I think emotional intelligence is a gateway to that. And I know we touched upon mindfulness as well. And you could also say that mindfulness is and in emotional intelligence is also connected to one another, because only if I'm mindful and I'm aware of the current situation or state of where I am or who I'm with, I can actually give this person the full attention and allow to demonstrate emotionally intelligent behavior. And I think emotionally intelligent behavior or emotionally intelligent leadership is the key to interpersonal relationship, or the quality of relationships are impacted if we demonstrate emotionally intelligent behavior. It's almost like the bridge between people. And when we think of the workplace, it's all about these bridges. It's about bridges between coworkers, leaders, and colleagues, etc. So I think the ability to connect to others deeply and in a meaningful way is not only important for work, but also important for everybody's well-being. Because if I'm emotionally intelligent, it means I have an antenna. I focus on, training your awareness on emotions will help us understand somebody else better, which directly impacts well-being. I know it's a bigger circle, but it is connected. So we're looking into programs around or tools around emotionally intelligent workplace behavior. It sounds very academic now, but it really does boil down to really making an effort and being empathetic and understanding who I'm with and being aware of your own state of mind, your own emotions.
Yeah, no, it's can only be a good thing. Nicholas, you were nodding sagely at one point. You did this, which implies that you might have something to say. Specifically, I noticed that you were responding around the caring for other people aspect of what Katrin was saying. Is that something that you've seen? Are you all emotionally intelligent at GoCo?
Yes, I was appreciating the wonderful philosophy that Hyatt has, and some of the key terms that were being outlined. Really well done. Both my fellow panelists are full of great information and so forth. From my standpoint, when I look at a work environment or a colleague environment, I think that the first thing, which is quite important, is to recognize that if you don't do the fundamentals well, you shouldn't introduce kind of extra credit projects, right? In other words, you have to have a good foundation first. And to me, a good foundation is making sure that your key human resource processes, or what I call your human resource system, works very well. And that's how you recruit people, orient people in your organization, how you communicate to people, your training and development initiatives, and your performance and management initiatives. So if you've got a great human resource system, then you can build other really interesting programs, like let's say a wellness program, wellness initiatives, and so forth, because people see that you're already doing the basics well. If you do the basics poorly, people will think the extra credit is just simply a misguided step in management, in the direction of management, to try to fool them, So in other words, you can't fool anybody in the workforce. Everyone is very wise. Everyone sees all, and we just have to be transparent and create a great basis from which our human resources can thrive. And then you add that layer, as was described earlier, this richness where people can really appreciate, oh, they're doing something because they care about me. And they want to care for me. They're not just putting a healthy work environment together. They're actually showing this care. And, in the past, we've done things like, sharing the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People as a 3-day training program, which kind of touches on personal and professional sides of one's life. And you share this 3-day training with people with no expectations that they use it in work, or it's just simply a gift that you give to someone in a group of, say, 20. And I was always amazed at the return that you get on that, because people really felt like you were giving them something to enrich their entire lives, not just their work life, for example. So that was my take on that kind of because there's so many creative things you can do. If you've got enough money, you can do a lot of stuff. I mean, to help our colleagues thrive in the work environment. It's always that balance between, your long-term profitability and, your ability to serve your customers and do your core business while creating a really wonderful environment that remains nimble and still can move quite quickly. So, just some additional thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, no, much appreciated. And I think what it comes down to, isn't it, is you can't deliver hospitality if you're not being hospitable to your staff. If everyone's like, ooh, like that, it's not so much with the relaxing. I was
also, just to add one thing here, I think it's also the times nowadays. I think we touched upon briefly on the pandemic, but I think certain world events have an impact on how we feel as humans in general, right? And if there is a heightened feeling of anxiety, depending on where I am in the world, and my well-being is impacted by this, this is something that companies, we as employers need to look into, not only for, you could say people need to feel well to do their job, as whether it's this connection to performance, but I'd like to say it is a value in itself, because we have first and foremost a personal relationship, a human relationship between a company and the employees, and I think we have a responsibility also from the human side of things to make sure that create an environment, and I agree with you, also the processes that bring it to life, that respects human well-being, because it's also whether it is job seekers or colleagues expect nowadays, because they've all been affected, or many through recent events, personal or global ones.
I think it's fair to say that hospitality has always been one of those difficult places where the guest enjoying the hospitality is having a great time, and hospitality is one of the most unpleasant places to work if you're in the wrong part of it. And so trying to bring those things two together so that we can continue to make profits, but continue to have people working with us is the big problem that we're all trying to unpick at the moment. And it's not just money, before you all write in, but it is also money. And it was interesting what you were saying there, Nicholas, about that what you're doing with your team members has to be real and not just something you've bolted on for Pride Month, or you've bolted on for Black Lives Matters, or you've bolted on for Women's Day. It has to be something that happens all the time, because people can smell when something is fake. And I think that's something that we've enjoyed in the on the kind of the edges of the wellness industry as well. And I was wondering if you'd like to talk a little bit about kind of wellness washing and how you can tell between, particularly if you've got a hotel and you're looking for a spa operator or something like that, how you can tell whether what they're delivering goes all the way through, or whether it's just we're going to bring in somebody on work experience to do yoga at sunrise.
Yeah, I think of course, I think the term wellness washing is an interesting one, because you do see it, all the time. And I generally, I have to say, I see it in food. I see it in supplementation products and grooming mainly. I guess you're right. Hotels that make offers or claims, I think most of those claims are probably more correct than, let's say, these other consumer items that I was mentioning, where the consumer items, they tend to be just out and out misleading. Where if I think of a resort offering, it may be touted to be a little bit more posh, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more something, but I've never gone to a resort and have it not exist, right? Where it's just a complete false claim, right? I may have to do more to enjoy it that way or whatever. It may not be as nice as I thought, but it's not like it wasn't there at all. And yet on the consumer products, this is where I see total confusion taking place. And of course, the most vulnerable, meaning the people that are least aware, they are the ones that are the victims here, like everything in the world, right? So I think it's a real shame that people don't have integrity in their marketing, in their message. They don't want to stand behind their products for the claims they make. I think that's a shame. I appreciate some of the regulation I see in Europe on this, labeling, manufacturing, I spent some time recently in Berlin during the Hotel Investment Conference, and just appreciating some of the differences in that capital city versus, where I live. And, when you see things that are labeled a certain way, the fact that I could trust that versus in America where, holy mackerel, there's no telling what's really in it. Unless you are really getting that microscope out and looking at the fine print. So yes, I think it's a shame, this wellness washing phenomenon, because I do think it really kind of lets people believe that they are participating in improving their wellness when they're simply being a victim in a marketing ploy.
Yeah.
And again, I keep thinking about consumer goods because that's where I see the real violation taking place from my perspective.
Daniel, how can you prove the authenticity of something? If you go online, there are any number of therapists out there all plying their trade. There doesn't seem to be any kind of kite mark, or how can you be sure that if you're going somewhere and you're being treated for something, they're not,
So there are kite marks. There are regulatory bodies aplenty. So if your therapist does not belong to an accredited body at all, you might want to ask why. And there's this big drive towards legitimacy. And under the auspices of the government, you've got the Professional Standards Authority, it of the little kite mark. And some governing bodies of therapists are registered accreditants with the Professional Standards Authority, and some are not. And the ones that aren't either haven't made the grade or disagree with the hoops that they have to go through to make the grade, which is quite funny because to become an accredited member of any body, you have to jump through many hoops. If you are accredited with the body, it means you are not plying a trade. You have a trade and you have been recognized, you've had the right training, you've got the right experience. And it also means that you have to do certain ethical things. So to belong to an accredited body, it means you have to have clinical supervision on a regular basis. You have to undertake regular continual professional development. And some of them even ask that you have regular therapy yourself so that you don't either lose yourself while you're dealing with everybody else's stuff, but also you remember what it's like to be in the other chair. You don't have to, by law, belong to any of these bodies yet, although there are moves in that direction. It's just, why would you go with somebody who isn't, unless they've got a very valid reason for not doing so?
Yes, one just wonders if it's something that's been kind of added on if you're in a hotel and they say, we can offer you this.
Well, yeah, exactly. So wellness washing is when every single spa hotel has the same thing, and they have do you remember we had this conversation a very long while ago? You told me about a certain hotel's commitment to well-being, and I went, I bet their idea of well-being is really different to my idea of well-being, and you went, what do you think their idea is? And I went, a whirlpool spa, a massage therapist, and a sleep app, and you went, oh, do you remember?
No, I was thinking more about those little fish that were supposed to eat all your dead skin that was so popular for a while.
Well, there is that. So wellness washing is just providing the bare minimum to your guests and making it sound like you're offering more. Or you go to that spa and it's chipped and it's faded and it's falling apart, or you're doing the same thing as everybody else. And it's actually quite stressful to get involved with it and sign up for it, or there's never a slot free for the therapist because you've got enough therapists on board for the amount of guests that you have. Whereas you want everything. If you're offering it to a guest, you want it to be stress less. Absolutely.
Yes, you don't want stress to be piled into your spa experience.
Exactly. But wellness washing, when you're a company offering it to your staff, you can spot that a mile off. It's that one workshop a year because it's mental health week. It's giving them a yoga class, but they have to work an extra hour to make up for it. It's an EAP program that isn't really fit for purpose because you've paid for the low end one, so they get like a couple of telephone sessions that don't help. That's when you know you're being fobbed off, and people are wise to that. I mean, and it's a phenomenon now in recruitment in the UK. When people are going for jobs, as the candidate, that's the number one question: what's your well-being policy look like? How are you going to look after me? How are you going to help me mitigate my work stress?
Yeah.
And if your well-being policy isn't up to scratch, if it's washing, then they're not going to take the job.
Well, let me assure you that if you work with me, there will be no work stress.
It's not an offer.
No, I can't employ anyone else. I have to do all of it myself. No, we have a team of many. I won't go into our work stress. It's all in care. We have lots of dogs. Just going back to the community thing, because it's a trend that we're seeing in the hotel sector, which is driven by their need to make more money, which is fair because that's why we're all here. Is to not on life, but in general, certainly, or probably on this webinar, is to think about ways to bring what we've learned and improve the world with them and make enough money to feed ourselves and go nice places and see all the places that we're talking about. But the community needs to come more into the hotel sector as a wider thing. Hotels used to be more part of the community, but kind of the growth of all these different hotels and the kind of commercialization and the industrialization has meant that they tend to be more isolated buildings in cities. Something that we've seen as a recent trend is more opening up, more kind of drawing people into F&B, leaning on the local community to create that kind of the interesting environment and buy more food and create that interesting environment. It all feeds on, it's a happy cycle of happiness. Is that something, Nicholas, that we're seeing in wellness as well, using not even like day spa, but people kind of dropping in and dropping out from the wider community? Or is it more of a break and people coming in from outside?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about, kind of old thinking, which was we do this function here, we do that function there, and so forth. But I think that in today's world, because of the, all of the things that have transpired with technology, the COVID pandemic, and so forth and so on, I think people are drawn more to mixed use developments in general. I think people want, the idea of, live, work, visit, all in a really tight radius. And then I can always venture out. It's the same in like small bedroom communities. You have what you need. You really don't venture out much, but you have access to other places, that type of thing. So we see both in urban development and resort development, people really asking the question, how can I be, more all things to all people in a way? How can I tap into the community? Because that's a really nice ongoing resource. I might have seen that really full up in person during COVID. For example, some businesses said, Jesus, my domestic market or my local market, if I just market in this way, or if I just provide these services or products, I can really stimulate them. So it's really, kind of thinking about the things that we didn't in the past, and how in a resort do I get the communities that are 10, 15 miles away to come and use my resort. Of course, if you're in an urban setting, it's how do I get a rich mix of people to use the development so that they are, not needing to be mobile across town and be caught up in all the difficulties of traversing inner city. How can I, kind of make a valuable development, and a valuable development is one that, generally speaking, is one where you can sell real estate at a premium.
Yeah.
And you can sell real estate at a premium if you have the right services available to people. And many times in today's world, those services are wellness oriented. They are clinics. As Daniel was saying earlier, it could be an outpatient clinic of some type. I've seen dental. We have, mental health, as we talked about, along with spa, along with fitness in one offering. Classes are very popular in urban settings. A place that has great classes, great fitness, great spa, good clinics, other services for beauty that men and women would like to have. Those things make sense because you've got everything in one stop. That's your lifestyle. Choices are all there. So I think that mixed use development becomes the really only way to go going forward. I think it used to be where people had zoning ideas and it was kind of old mentality of, we're going to do all the industrial over here. We're going to do schooling over here. They came from a different mindset. Today, the mindset is make things convenient for people, make it have, make sense. Don't have wasted time traveling inner city or long distances for resorts.
Yes. I think we've all seen what the mayor of Paris is doing at the moment with her 15-minute project. And it all seems to be coming together very well, and mental health is improving, no doubt, as a result. Although I see people are now swimming in the Seine, which is another story for another time. But on that front, I'd like to, Daniel, did you have anything to add on that? Because you were nodding sagely, and I would hate people to nod sagely and me.
Yeah, no. I was agreeing with practically everything you said.
Very good.
In terms of bringing people in, especially from the locale. I mean, you can maximize things so much well that way. And if you've got a one-stop shop that's got all that in it, absolutely. Why aren't you offering it to the local community as well as people flying in from elsewhere?
Yeah. I guess that's the thing, isn't it? And I'm going to conclude on this meaningful note, which is informed by all the wise things that my guests have been saying today, which is that everything that we did used to be segregated into little boxes, didn't it? It used to be holidays here, and this is my work persona here, and this is that there. And now everything's kind of come together. And on the one hand, that's good because we're more whole, balanced individuals. And on the other hand, that's bad because some of those bits are a bit spikier than other bits. And then when they end up bleeding into your, happier bits, then it's not so good. And we all need to work out how to manage that. And I think that's probably the core of where hospitality is going at the moment. So I thank you for being able to allow me to reach this conclusion, which makes me look very wise.
Yes, indeed.
I assure you, I'm only stripping off the wisdom that you've all had in the last 45 or so minutes. So I'd like to, it's weird, this is normally the place where I would ask everyone else who's watching this to thank my panelists, but it leaves me to, in fact, to just thank you myself, and to assure you that everyone watching this afterwards is thanking you through the ether. So thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Great to meet all of you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.